Hello and welcome to JTV Instagram Live Short, my new series featuring authors, speakers, coaches, consultants, and small business owners. I'm your host, Janette Burke. Today, I'm joined by Norman Bacal. He was a big corporate lawyer, actually a finance lawyer featuring Canadian film and TV, and he was at the top of the game, but things changed. And he's going to talk to us about that and talk to us about how rewiring is an option to retiring. Welcome to JTV Live Short, Norman Bacal.
Well, thanks for having me, Janette. It's really an honor to be here with you.
You're more than welcome. So let's dive right in.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about your story. I set it up. You can fill in the blanks and
Sure.
And
I'll give you the 30-second
that would be great.
Portrait.
Okay.
So I moved to Toronto in 1989 with my family, which included 4 children, the youngest of which was 10 days old when we moved here, to open up the Toronto branch of a local Montreal law firm. And over the next the following 25 years, we grew it to becoming one of the nationally prominent law firms. It was called Heen and Blakey. It was home to Prime Minister Chrétien and Prime Minister Trudeau after they retired. So it had quite a storied past, and we built quite an incredible future out of it. Over that time period, I was a film finance lawyer, and I started working with Canadian studios and worked my way up to American studios like Warner Brothers and Sony and MGM. And I actually even sat on the board of Lionsgate while it was building for a period of 10 years. And I was sitting in the boardroom when we made the decision to produce The Hunger Games. And that I had to say was one of the cool moments of my life.
That was a huge
in terms of, and I was a kid from the sticks in Montreal, and growing up to be sitting around a boardroom table at a Hollywood studio was something completely unimaginable. Anyway, the firm was going great.
Like my dream, Norman.
Yeah, there you go. There you go for everybody. Who knew? But the firm, about a year after my leadership position expired, so I was the managing partner of the firm. We built it. Literally, we had offices in Paris. We had offices in Beverly Hills. We even had started something in China. So we were flying high. And a year after I left the leadership position, the firm came crashing to a halt. In fact,
and how did that happen? Mismanagement, or what? How did?
Yeah,
that
I don't want to blame any. In fact, I wrote a book about it, which was the beginning of my own rewirement. It's called Breakdown. So if anybody's interested in finding out the whole story, but ultimately it was too much change, too fast. Leadership involves all kinds of varying talents, and not every lawyer is equipped to lead. I think that's the long and the short of it is, and it's
that probably is true, mainly because in law school you're really not taught how to run a business.
That's right.
You're taught how to be a lawyer.
That's right. So I learned by the seat of my pants, and fortunately, grew it from something small to something very big. At our height, we were over 1,100 employees and partners. And imagine stepping into that with no business experience. So shame on us for not preparing better. Made the great subject of a book, but the firm, it was literally, according to the Globe and Mail, the greatest failure in Canadian law firm history. And as much as I was the poster boy of its success, I became the poster boy of its failure. In fact, for almost a year, it didn't matter where I went in public, people gave me those, the eyes you give mourners when they're when you're visiting a funeral. Yes. I couldn't escape that.
How did that make you feel?
As it turned out, angry, and particularly when people walk up to you and say, you'll be stronger for this, you'll get through this and you'll be stronger. And all I'm thinking is, I'll tell you what, you go through this because I'm not feeling any stronger right now.
So life was a shit show for you, and you didn't know how to deal with it, right?
That's
you
right.
were used to being a prominent, successful lawyer.
Like everything I touched for 25 years with success. And here I was, and I'd stepped back in the last 3 months to try and save it. So literally I was the poster boy at the end.
Okay, but
And I
you got a
failed.
lesson out of
It was a failure. It was
it. Right.
like a major league failure.
Mhm.
And I had to come to grips with it. Thankfully, I had somebody to talk to about it, my wife. And she handed me a pen and one of those empty notebooks and said, why don't you just process your feelings? You need to process what's happened to you before you can go on. And that was probably a life-changing moment for me.
Okay,
And
so let's talk about um you're in this place, you're writing it down, and you're figuring it out. But how can your story of rewirement versus retirement actually motivate or help or inspire somebody else who's in this same position? Now, it might not be that they were, in a prominent position like you, or had successfully built up a law firm to the extent that you did. It could be that they lost a business. It could be that they've been fired or let go, and they have to find the next chapter in their life. How can you and your story help them deal with that? Because I know you write books, and I also know that you have courses and that you actually work one-to-one with people on this. And I think today this is a very big topic. A lot of people are facing financial hardship and post-COVID, and a lot of people have lost a lot of things, including their business or a big business like, or a law firm or whatever, like you had. How can you help them get through that using your
all
story?
right. Well, here's what I learned, and you're right. A lot of it I've written down in my books. In particular, it Take Charge is really the story of my life, of going from being passive in situations to actually taking charge of where your life is going. And it doesn't just apply to people who have suffered loss or to people who are facing retirement. It applies to university students. It applies to people in the workforce who are contemplating, should I change jobs? Is it time to take on a new challenge? Should I end a friendship? Should I end or start a new relationship? It really applies completely across the board. And what I learned was that there are some particular principles that I've lived by and that I teach. And I liken it to a metaphor that my great uncle gave to me while he was on on his deathbed. And he said, Norm, think of your career or your life as a river rather than a ladder that you're trying to climb to reach this idea of success. But imagine a river, and your job is to steer your boat down the river. And as you're steering the boat, you will have forks in the road or opportunities to branch off. And at that moment in time, your job is to take charge, make decisions, decide what you want to do, and go. Now, what Uncle Harry didn't tell me was there are obstacles that you have to navigate. Sometimes there's a huge set of falls just waiting for you around the next bend, and you're going to crash.
Mhm.
But what I learned and what I teach is one of the reasons why we don't make decisions, one of the reasons why we just stay in bad relationships, we continue on what we're doing, we go in some respects adrift in our boats, is because we're afraid of making a mistake. We're afraid to fail. And
Or could you also be afraid of change because it's
but the reason we're afraid of change is because we don't know, and we're afraid we might be embarrassed by what we encounter that's around that next turn. We're afraid that somebody is going to discover we're not as smart as they think we are, that we're afraid to try something new. Why? Because I've been really good at this, and so I'm not going to try anything else, because if I try anything else, I'm not going to be good as good, and people are going to find out, and I might be embarrassed, and I'm afraid of that. And if you can change your mindset, if you can look at those opportunities as a chance to learn something new, and if you can recognize you don't have to do it all yourself. So like when you're in your stream in your boat, are you better off paddling the boat on your own, or are you better off in a boat where you've recruited 10 strong paddlers to give you a hand? The answer is obvious. So once you recognize you're not going to become an expert at something new completely on your own. Once you reach out to people who are the experts and take their advice and practice and make your mistakes and pick yourself up and keep going, what you will find is you will continue to learn. Now, somebody might look at that or hear that and say, yeah, right. Okay. So, but how does it really apply? And I am the poster boy for that as well, because when my firm failed, I was an expert at running a business. That's what I knew how to do. I was an expert at film finance. I was, one of the top lawyers on the planet in that. But that was all behind me. So I decided I liked writing, but I didn't know how to write a book. So I went online. I found some people, basically took some online courses on how to write. I wrote nonfiction to start because that was natural for me as a lawyer. But to write a book of fiction, my first reaction was, I could never do that. And now I've published 2 murder mysteries and I'm working on a 3rd. And I read great authors now, but now I read them to see what can I learn from them? What tricks do they use?
So you took your skills as a lawyer and applied them in a different way. Is that fair to say?
That's right. I took some of my skills as a lawyer, but skills as an author, I had none. So I've started from zero. And this is why when I speak to university students, I say, listen, I'm no different than you are. You know nothing about the world. I knew nothing about writing 7 years ago. And now I've published 5 books. So how did I do that? Not so much as what did Norm learn, but what process did Norm follow? What process can you follow to take you from where you are to where you want to be?
Okay. And if you had to summarize that process to maybe just one little thing, one tidbit you could give us, because of course you do have books and you do have courses and you do speak at universities, and you also have had a TED Talk behind you. So I know you don't want to give the cat out of the bag, but
no, I'm actually happy to do that.
Yeah, one thing that my audience, can take and
one
really
thing
run with
is, I would say it's the power right now of the internet to give you information on just about anything you want to learn, and just accept you're not going to get better unless you're continuing to learn. And we started with rewirement rather than retirement. And the rewirement is not my phrase. It's another author who wrote it in relation to retirement. But through the process of our lives, we need to stay young. We need to keep rewiring our brain to learn new things. So that necessarily implies we need people to teach us. We need to practice, and we need to do it. And I'm a big believer that I need to do it wrong the first 5 times before I get it right the 6th. And once you get it right, you've created a new loop in your brain, and you go from there and you keep building on that.
So I agree with you that life is a continuum of learning. And I think most successful people would say that. And even successful people have been known to go into a different direction in the latter part. Like they may have achieved success at something up until 55, 60, and they're very proficient at that. But then they say, you know what, I've had enough of that. So now I'm going to take my money and maybe go and earn it through real estate or try something else. So you can't, in life, you can't be afraid to try. I get you have to be evolving, you have to be growing, you have to be learning. But what say you to this? So they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. But yet they also say that one should develop a niche and get very good at that niche and not really go beyond that. How would you sort of bridge the two in what you're saying about retirement and rewirement?
I'm not going to pretend that this is going to apply to everybody. Largely because, for example, I know some lawyers who have stayed in their lanes for their entire career. And I look at them and they know how to do one thing better than anybody else. And that's all they've done for the last 30 years. I look at that and say, I'd go out of my mind. For me,
well, that's a safe way.
Yeah, it's safe, but some people's brains are wired, to not to take risk. And why won't they do anything else? Well, because I don't know how to do that, or I'm afraid I'll embarrass myself, or I don't want the client to know I don't know that. Whereas my approach has always been, it was kind of from Uncle Harry, take the road, don't say no, say yes, figure it out. And the worst that'll happen is you'll get it wrong a few times till you figure it out. So
Right. Or
the
we
question
don't
is, can you
know.
get yourself used to the idea that it's okay, that failure is your friend, it's not your enemy?
So we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes we don't even need to know. Not that we shouldn't learn something new or figure it out, but if it's a matter of making money and we don't have all the answers, certainly we can find experts to surround ourselves with that do have the answers that, can add to what we already know. And so that we don't have to do everything ourselves. But we're nearing the end of this interview, Norman, and I want to give you a little bit of time for two things. Number one, parting words, like something profound you want people to remember. And the second thing is to give us your website address, please.
All right. So I'll start with the website address. It's the hardest part of getting there is spelling my name right. So it's normanbacal.com. It's BACAL. .com, and you'll find out everything you need to about me over there, and links to my books and my TED Talk. And I'll finish with the theme of my TED Talk, which is, the name of it is Become the Person You Can't Imagine. And it was designed for university students. I gave it to university students at what was then Ted Rogers School. I think it's now TMU. Sorry, it was whatever it was. It's now TMU.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I didn't have a clue how to give a TED Talk until I was accepted to speak, and I had an uh-oh moment. Be careful what you wish for. But the long and the short of that is, there's a process, and this became the root of what I talk about in terms of rewirement. But there's a process we all have to go through if we want to have a rich life, in order to take us from where we are, which is a person who can't imagine where you're going to be in 5 years or 10 years, and hopefully you can, and allows you to begin a process to take you there. And I have to say, again, I start with when I was, I suppose, in my early 20s, I was just happy to know I finally figured out I wanted to be a lawyer, even though I had no idea what lawyers did. But to imagine the career that I would have, that it would have been as rich as it was, that I would have taken chances on doing all kinds of things, again, that I could never imagine, including, for example, sitting in the boardroom of a Hollywood studio. Like, that's completely unimaginable in my 20s, in my 30s, and even in my 40s. But at the end of my 40s, it became a reality. So, but that doesn't just happen. It happens because you learn how to push yourself in new directions. You're able to set goals. You're able to hold yourself to those goals you're setting, and then you break your life down into little pieces in terms of, what am I going to learn this week? What am I going to learn this month? Where do I want to be next year? And then suddenly you feel the evolution, and 5 years from now, you are not the person you are today. And that's the goal. At 67, I'm at a place I'm really happy with, but I hope that at 77, I'm at a place I can't imagine today.
Okay, so just to summarize here as we close out, don't be afraid to dream or try, and just have sort of a plan of action and take those baby steps.
Baby steps, and don't be afraid to trip, put on a bandage, and keep going.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being with us today, Norman. Great advice. And thank you for being with us today. I want to remind you to follow me on Instagram for my new series, J2V Instagram Live Short, where we're going to have more discussions like this with authors, speakers, coaches, consultants, and small business owners, and where we hope that you'll gain some knowledge to grow yourself and improve your life in some way. And I want to thank you again and wish you a great day, and we'll see you next time. This is Janette Burke, your host, signing off.